We're looking now at the arm trap series. I'll just quickly remind you guys that, as we saw earlier in the video, the idea behind the arm trap is that from Placido's perspective, as the defensive man in side control, he will always wants inside position with his frame here, either inside my hip, that's probably the most common, or inside my bicep, okay? And both of them, because they're based on inside position, deny me an ability to either cross-face or facilitate his ability to elbow escape and bring his elbow and knee together. So it's a good thing for him to have that inside position. It's desirable for him. We, on the other hand, are always looking to create situations where we carry this arm out and away. Now, fellas, please understand that sometimes you don't even need a specific technique to do this. Sometimes the guy on bottom just gets lazy, or it might be that you landed this way right off a takedown, and before he gets a chance to get inside position, you may just be able to just quickly go in and get it. So if that happens, that's awesome. Think about it like a bonus, okay? You didn't earn it, but it happened anyway. Just take advantage of it. So other times, your opponent's more disciplined with his elbow, then you got to work for it. And we saw a bunch of ways to do this. We saw a Corda Nelson method. We used the hip shifting method. I'll demonstrate everything out of the hip shifting method because that's my favorite method of doing this. But the idea is I want to get his elbow from inside my hip to outside my hip. And once this occurs, I want to hold his head and control it and bring it in so that my knee is right up there by the crown of his head and my chest goes over his face to lock everything in place. So that when Placido goes to pull his right arm out, it's really, really difficult. The three combinations of my elbow connected to my hip, my knee connected to his head, and my chest over his face make it a really tough position for Placido to work from, okay? So I'm just going to demonstrate this with an angle chain. We're going to start with Placido in good position with his elbow on the inside. We're going to get our crossface. I don't care what he's doing with his other arm. Most people like it like this. From here, we're going to start walking down towards our training partner's hips. Then we're going to turn our hips in to face his, and we're going to use our hips and buttocks and the strength of our legs walking backwards to trap his arm out and then touch our knee to the crown of his head. Once we get to this position, we're going to change our orientation from chest to face. And from this position, Placido is left with this defensive arm in place like so. I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to switch it here to the neck. So that when Placido goes to pull his arm free, it's awfully difficult. Now from here, I'm going to put my hand over his wrist and I'm going to bring my head further forward and going over his head. This enables me to come up into a position like so with a high hip. This high hip enables me to step my leg directly over my training partner's leg like so. Now the whole thing is to get my hamstring connected to my training partner's neck. And then from here I grab a hold of my own shin. Now the whole thing is a drive across his body that puts my knee on the floor. Now I bring my head forward and expose my foot to my second leg so we can lock up a tight triangle. As soon as that's done, we come up and start building for height. As Placido tries to work his way out of here, it's extremely difficult. And then we get a very good strangle with our legs. So, once again, we start off in a basic side control position. I walk down his body over the hips. I turn my hips in so that I can use my hips and legs to walk his arm out of position. From here, I go forward, chest to face, and I lock everything in place. Now, I transition my hand to the neck, and my hand here goes to his wrist. We'll just change the angle a little bit. So, initially, I had this cross-face grip, and I come in to seize the neck. Now I grab a hold of my training partner's wrist, and I push it in towards his collarbone. I take everything up north, and I separate chest to chest. That creates a situation where my leg can come up. Now I just step my leg across his body. As I put my leg across the body, I release the hand, and as the hand goes forward, I just kick my leg around the corner like so. Now from here, I capture my own shin. I bring my knee down to the floor, lean forward, lock up the figure of four, and there's a very tight strangle for the finish. Now, what is this going to look like in competition? Obviously, we don't want to hesitate in that final step over. When we start here, we walk away from his hips, we come back, capture our training partner's arm, transfer chest to face. Now from here, we go over the top and pin my training partner's hand down. We start that action of lifting, and we're just going to throw our leg straight on through and make a good capture. We lock a hold of our own shin. So when Placido tries to pull out of here, it's very, very difficult. Now my foot goes through, I lean forward, and as my right foot comes off the floor, it becomes increasingly easy to lock up that figure of four. Ideally, you'll want to finish on top, but if your opponent was so explosive that he managed to twist and turn you over, it really wouldn't matter. You're in the perfect position now to lock up and finish regardless of your top or bottom position. Okay? Now, just a word to the wise. Once we get this position and we've locked in, don't make it hard by gripping here at the crossface. Make sure that you transfer from here to here. That enables you to lift the head into the triangle a little easier, okay? He will have his arms and head defensive. So from the start position, when we come in, we transfer to the neck. I bring myself chest to face, and I get a hold of my training partner's top wrist. I don't want to come up and he intercepts my leg. So we make sure we keep that wrist compressed down. Now from here, I lean forward on my training partner. I just throw my leg straight on through. We're in the perfect position now to grip, drive our knee to the mat, and bring everything forward so we can lock up the figure of four. What we don't want is a situation where my foot stays down on the mat. Then it's very, very hard to lock a triangle. What we want is to lean forward and take the foot off the mat. It's that which makes for an easy figure of four. And then from here, we get the finishes we want, either top or bottom position. Just seen from another angle, feet towards the camera.
Feet towards the camera.
Gotcha. From here, we trap our training partner's arm, chest over face. We get a hold of our training partner's wrist, and then one motion, everything just goes in over the top, and we capture our training partner's leg. We get a hold of our own shin, we lean forward to expose our foot to the second leg, and from here, we come back up, building for height and a good strangle. This is, as it were, the industry standard method of hitting triangles from side control. It's a good method, it's a solid method. It does, however, have an obvious drawback, which I'll just point out now. Why it's not my favorite method. Head here, feet here. Okay, as good as this method is, it does have an obvious drawback. When I come up, space develops through here. If I mistime or mismanage my step, Placido pulls his right elbow, you can end up in situations where you lose the arm. Okay? The higher you go up, the easier the move. But the easier his escape as well. That's not to say this move can't work, but it will require a little bit of speed on your part. It will also require, in many cases, a little bit of surprise. The first time you hit this move, it tends to be very successful because your opponent's worried about the position overall, and then the leg comes over very quickly and the finish is quick. So it tends to work very well when you first unleash it. But as you start going through the motion of trapping the arm and rising up from chest to face, now your opponents know what's coming next, it becomes a little harder to work. It's still absolutely worth your while to learn the move. It's a great move and it's worked very well for many years. But the move which I'll show you next is my preferred version of this move. We've been looking at this idea of attacking from side control, and in particular, we're looking at the idea of trapping an opponent's elbow and taking it from inside position to outside position. Once the elbow goes outside, we can control our training partner's neck, pull everything in, and connect our elbow to our own thigh. And as a result, we can shift our chest over our training partner's face and threaten their breathing a little. When they try to move away from this situation, it's awfully, awfully difficult, and their arm gets well trapped. In the previous move, guys, we looked at the idea of capturing the wrist and pressuring it downwards, pushing the wrist down. Then we looked at the idea of climbing our own body high. And as our body got high, we got an ability to swing our leg across our training partner's body and put it all the way through into a situation where we could wrap and get our opponent's arm and head trapped. Then we drove our knee down to the mat, and as a result, we could create the perfect conditions to lock a triangle and finish. Now, that's, as it were, the traditional method of hitting triangles from side control. And it's a good method. It's strong, it's fast. If the guy's not expecting it, it can definitely work. But there's an obvious problem involved here. And that's the idea that as I climb for height, space develops around my hips. And if my opponent is expecting the move, maybe I've hit the move successfully a bunch of times, I've got a reputation for it, it's not that difficult for my opponent to start pulling his elbow free before I can make the successful step over, okay? Because of this reason, I generally prefer to teach knee slide entries. From earlier in this video, you guys will remember that I'm a huge fan of the mounted head and arm position as the tightest position to hit mounted triangles from. Refreshing your memory, the idea of a mounted head and arm is that we end up in situations where you're mounted just around the head and the arm itself. From this situation, if your opponent goes to elbow escape, it's physically impossible. If they try to hit a kipping escape, that too is impossible. If they try to bridge, you're so high up on the chest, you barely feel it. The only real danger here, and it's not much of a danger, is your opponent throwing his legs up and you just pummel through the legs and get to the win. So this position here is, in my opinion, the single best entry method for any form of triangle. Now, the good news is that you can use the arm trap to get exactly into that position. And you can do so without the problems associated with conventional step over entries into the triangle. So let's have a look at all of this. The entry method is identical to what we've been looking at. Here, Placido has the inside position with his elbow. We have a fairly conventional crossface. And from here, we start that action of walking our hips down the body so I can lever my hips against his elbow. Then I can use the strength of my legs to walk his elbow out of position. From here, we're going to switch our hand grip to the neck. We're going to shift our chest from chest to chest to face, and we're going to pull our elbow up onto our thigh. You can do it with your elbow down on the mat. It's not wrong, but you get a tighter connection when the elbow comes up to the thigh. Now, previously, we've been looking at situations where we press the wrist down. A little different now. We're going to go through and we're going to force the elbow outwards. I'm going to put my head on the mat. That's the huge advantage of this method. I'm so much tighter with my connection to my opponent's chest when my head goes down instead of the conventional method where my head goes up. Okay? By bringing my head down, I can follow with my knee. There's just no space for your opponent to pull away, as opposed to coming up and trying to throw your hamstring over. Rather, I stay down low and then I just knee drive right across my training partner's clavicles, just like so. As soon as we get to this position, now we build for height and we take our foot over his shoulder. And lo and behold, we're back in our favorite attacking position. Once we get here, we start the action of leaning over to one side. I use my hand as a base of support, so that if Placido tried to turn into me, my hand would hold up my body. Now I just take my foot and I just touch my own knee. My second hand comes down to the mat and I lock a hand assist. And as a result, I can come forward, bring my foot up off the mat and expose my foot to my second leg. I don't want my foot on the mat and try to lock a triangle from here. That's just a disaster. Rather, I want to lift it to get a clean triangle entry. Then from here, we come up, we build for height. As Placido tries desperately to defend himself by locking his hands and bridging and doing all those things that people do, all we do now is just bring our body weight forward and back heel the legs for a very tight strangle. So, Placido, let's play with some different body positions and angles so we can pick this up. First one, you'll just be here, head and feet. Okay, from this weird angle, you'll get to see the arm trap. You won't get to see much else, but you will get to see the arm trap. So, we're starting here with our training partner. We start by walking away from his framing right arm and then turning our hips in. And as a result, we can start that walking action and pry his elbow out and away from his body. Now from here, I transfer chest to face, and I put my head down. From here, I take inside position and force his arm outwards. And then I start that action of walking my knee across his collarbone. My hand comes out as a base of support, and we start that turning action that brings my foot well forward. From this position, I place my hand on the mat, pull up on the head, sweep my foot around the corner and touch my foot to my own knee. I grab a hold of my own shin, then I lean forward, and as a result, we can lock up the figure of four for the finish. Now, from the exact opposite angle. Again, Placido's done a good job of getting that inside elbow position, so we need to do a good job of getting his elbow to the outside. From here, I transfer everything up to chest over face. I bring my hand in the inside position like so. I start the action of driving my knee across my training partner's collarbone. Let's have a look at it again. I don't want to go towards the armpit. I want to go over the shoulder towards the collarbone. So I bring my head north. I use my head as a base of support. So if Placido bridged, my head would hold me up. Now my knee goes right over the clavicles. My hand finds the floor. Even if Placido's got his arms in defensively, what I want to do is lift the head, and even if he grabs my leg now, watch how I turn the corner. I don't go forward because then my foot gets caught. Rather, I go around the corner, just like so. And as a result, my foot goes over the top. Now from here, we find ourselves in the mounted head and arm. Two knees, his head and arm trapped in. So if he tries to pull his arm out, it's a very difficult thing. He tries to escape, just go crazy on escape sequence. It's just really hard for the guy to move away. Now we start that action of lifting the head and bringing our foot around the corner. I grab my own shin, work my way across, and lock up the figure of four for the finish. Okay. Now, that's, in my opinion, the most high percentage way to hit the move. Placido, I think you'll agree that when the knee comes across, there's just no space to work with. Okay. Interestingly, Placido has never done this move before. He's going to do it on me now. So you'll see how easily coachable this move is. Okay. So Placido, I'll coach you through it from bottom position.
Your right side or left side?
You'll be on my right. So let's change our angle to here. Okay. First things first. Right now, I have the inside elbow position. That's good for me, bad for Placido. So Placido's first thing, he's going to walk his hips down, the way Placido, walk down and touch your hip to my hip. Now, when you walk backwards, you'll catch, just walk backwards. And then from here, start posting on my hip, knee, or knee, your choice. Now, you can see my right elbow has been captured. Let's change our angle. You can see my right elbow has been captured to outside position. When Placido comes up to his knees, that capture gets even worse. Let's change our angle. Now, guys, watch Placido's left hand. It's currently cross-facing, holding my lat. Okay, so that's the cross-face grip. But what he wants to do is switch to a neck grip here. Why? Because now when Placido pulls his left elbow back, it puts his leg underneath me like a pillow. And when I try to pull my arm out, it's really tough. The best I can do now is try and get inside position here. So Placido puts his hand on my bicep and he opens my elbow just enough, nothing crazy, you don't have to move very far. And then his knee is going to slide not across my chest, but his head, his head is going to go to the floor over my head. Good. That gives him the right direction. Then he takes his knee across my collarbones, not my chest. And as a result, now, let's freeze right there, Placido. This is the most important thing. If Placido drives forward, I'll hold his foot and he won't be able to complete the triangle. Okay? So instead, Placido turned that way. And that's how he beats my hand. And now I'm stuck in the mounted head and arm. I can't pull my elbow out. I can't kip. I can't even touch his hip, so there's no kip. I can't form a frame in front of it. There's no framing here. It's just a very, very difficult situation to deal with. Now from here, Placido is going to put all of his weight onto this leg. And as a result, this one becomes weightless and he's going to touch his foot to his knee. Then he's going to fall the other way and drive his knee to the mat. And then from here, his exposed foot is easy to lock the figure of 4, and he gets a perfect finish. Okay? So you can see how easy this one is to learn. Plus, you just did it flawlessly on the first attempt. It's an easy skill to learn. In addition to being an easy skill to learn, it gives much less space for your opponent to escape from, okay, than the classic high stepping method. The whole directionality of it is different. In the high stepping method, the head goes up and away. And of course, that means the hips follow. And then a knowledgeable opponent will have a tendency to pull his elbow free and escape. And that would suck, right? You took the guy down, you passed his guard, you got to a side, and you took the risk of submission, and the guy just got out. That's kind of heartbreaking. This method, using the knee slide across, gives far less space for an opponent to escape, okay? Now, I'm going to play around with the move with Placido for a while, and it's going to show you different varieties that I might use. Because remember, guys, anytime you get the mounted head and arm, you have 2 directions you can use your legs. So I'm just going to demonstrate how you use those 2 legs and directions. And sometimes I'm going to play the klutz and fall over. I get the triangle and you end up falling over. It can happen, right? But it doesn't matter if I have the triangle in place. I can finish from bottom position. So I just want to give you guys a spirit of how I teach my students to use this in sparring in the gym and in competition.
Start bottom side?
Yes, sir. So we're in here. Placido has good elbow position, and we're going to start using our favorite method to get rid of his good elbow position. Walking back and trapping the training partner's arm. Now, from here, as Placido goes in to move away from me and put some light resistance, we're constantly looking to take our knee over the top. He tries to grab my foot, stop things from moving. Look how we lift the head and start turning and getting that foot down towards the floor. Now from here, I'm going to use the opposite method of entry into the lock that we saw previously. We use the seated method, just like so. I have a choice between putting my feet in different directions and just sitting on the chest. When Placido goes to move me around, I can use my hands as a base of support, and then from here, we'll lock up the figure of 4 for finishes. Come up to your base, pal. Seen in this way, you can see this is an incredibly tight and effective way of entering into the triangle out of that elbow trap. In my opinion, it's no exaggeration to say this is by far the most mechanically sound and tactically sound method of doing so. There are many ways to enter into triangles from top, but this is the one I want you to focus on. We've been looking at the knee slide method going into triangles from top position, in particular from side position, and in particular, locking our opponent's elbow out into an elbow trap. As you were watching this, you may have been thinking, okay, that seems like a legit way of getting triangles, but one problem I sometimes run into is I can't get my opponent's head off the floor, and triangles can be problematic. If that's ever the case, just switch to 3/4 Jujigatame, okay? I also offer this not only as a method of dealing with situations where you can't get your opponent's head off the floor, I'm also going to mention it for you shorter limbed athletes, okay? I'm someone who has short legs for my height. And sometimes if I'm going with a very broad shouldered opponent, triangles can be a problem for me. In these situations, I always go to 3/4 Juji. Now this is a particularly tight form of 3/4 Juji because you'll be using a lat grip. on your opponent's arm, which is the single best way for preventing effective defense from your opponent and creates a very, very tight breaking fulcrum. So it's a better option than most Juji Gatame arm bars that you'll see out there. Okay, let's have a look at it. One thing doesn't change, we've got to get his elbow to the outside position and trapped, okay? So we'll take it from our favorite method of doing so, which is to walk down to the hips and turn back in. As we turn against that elbow, we're going to get good opportunities to trap it out to the side. Now, once we get there, we change to our neck grip, then we change from chest to chest, and we come up chest to face. We use our head as a base of support, and we get the inside position. On my training partner's defensive arm, tight defensive arm, no matter how tight he is here, you can always get that inside position and start opening the elbow outwards. And as a result, you can start walking your knee across. Once my knee walks across and we drive it down to the floor, there's always going to be that problem that you may not be able to release your foot, okay? Whenever you see that, just put the opposite foot up and turn the corner around like so, okay? Now, from this position, one of my favorite ways to work whenever I feel it's going to be tough to get a full closure of triangle around our opponent is to lift and take our foot around the corner in the opposite direction and lock up, just like so. Now from here, I shift my body weight. So you're on top of your opponent's chest and you just shift your body weight. I lock up over my training partner's arm, put my hand on my own thigh. As I rock back, I just step my foot over the top and drive for the finish. If you feel you need more stability, just sit down to the mat and hug your training partner's ribcage on the other side. As your poor old opponent tries to come up towards you, just pass the leg over the top of the head and get a nasty break from there. If he does come up and you feel your legs are sufficiently long to do it, you now have a superb triangle entry as well, okay? And that lat juji position really cements the move. So here we are again. Instead of using the classic methods of pushing wrists down and rising up high, which create a lot of space for your opponent to pull his arm free, I'm trying to urge you guys to get to this arm trap position, okay? Where from here, elbow in, buddy. We start by walking his hips away, turning our hip inside our training partner's elbow, and then from here we start walking back and levering his arm out. When he tries to release his arm, so difficult. Now we bring our knee in tight, and from here I switch my grip to the neck. Now I switch my chest position over my training partner's face. Now I get my hand inside his bicep, and I start that action of walking my knee through and across his collarbones. As my knee comes down to the mat, we find ourselves in the mounted head and arm. His head and arm trapped. I need to turn the corner. So I put my foot up, I lift his head, and then I just turn the corner to free my foot. First, I take my foot and I just lock right in here. So you're sitting on top of his chest, and as a result, you can change your body position very easily. First attacking option is right on top of him. Normally I don't advocate this, but in a 3/4 juji with the arm trapped behind the lat, it's very, very powerful. If you feel that's unstable, sit down to the mat and trap him. Pass your foot through and break. If he goes to shove your foot off and he comes up, he'll come right up into everybody's favorite, the triangle, okay? Used in this way, you can develop a very, very punishing arm lock attack from side control using the 3/4 juji with the lat grip. We've been looking at the idea of attacking from side control using that elbow trap. This basically ties into the overall philosophy that I'm trying to push upon you in this video. The big philosophy, the big picture that we're trying to push is this idea that you have to go beyond the basic position before submission model. That's a good starting model. It's an excellent model when you're fighting people, when you look at jiu-jitsu as a fighting style or a self-defense style, but where you don't have the luxury of striking to open people up and they have a strong defensive structure, you need to add an extra step, which is to attack your opponent's defensive structure, to get him out of tight, sound defensive positions and get him into weak, extended positions where the elbows move away from the body. That's why the first thing we go to attack in side control and mount and all the other pins is your opponent's elbows, because everything he does is built around the idea of defensively sound elbow position. The minute you start pulling elbows out and away from the body, that's when people start becoming easy to attack. So the overall philosophy that we're trying to push on you is that you get position first, and then you go through the crucial step of breaking your opponent's defensive posture, taking them out of good elbow position into weak and extended elbow position, and then suddenly the submissions come easy. So it's position, control grip, which means literally to break your opponent's defensive posture and hold them in extended, vulnerable positions where you can start to attack their breathing. And then when you're in that state of weakness, then you go to the third step of submission. One of the favorite submissions that we employ are variations of the triangle, because they use your legs to attack your opponent's head and arm. And your legs are always going to be stronger and more powerful than your opponent's head and one arm. So triangles get a big part of what we do here. Now, you don't have to use triangles as a stranglehold. You can use them for many other purposes too. We just saw how the triangle is very closely related to three-quarter Jujigatami. It's also very closely related to Kimura attempts. And in fact, there's a move which we always jokingly refer to as a Trimura, which is half triangle, half Kimura. This is one of the best methods for people who have shorter limbs. When you feel your opponent's very broad-shouldered and regular triangles as a strangle can be difficult, this can come to save you. So, working out of the same knee slide entry, you guys have figured out by now, I'm the big advocate of knee slide entries into triangles rather than conventional step-over methods. So, first thing we've got to do is we've got to trap that defensive arm and take it out of good position. He's got inside position, I want inside position. So I get my hip inside Placido's elbow. And from here, we pull everything in. I transfer my hand to the neck. I transfer my chest from chest to face. And I take my hand inside his bicep. My head comes down to the mat. I start that action of using my head as a base of support. And I take my knee, not across his belly, but across his clavicles. And as a result, I can start building for height and turning the corner. When I go to turn the corner, there's a danger that my foot may not pass the barrier of his clavicles. So when we see that, we take our foot around and then we just turn until our foot comes free. Okay? Now, from this position, normally I take this leg around for a stranglehold, but this time a little different. My foot comes in and touches just like so. From this position, we're going to commit down to the floor by grabbing our own shin. And from this position, I pull Placido around the corner and I lock what appears to be a triangle in the wrong direction. It's the wrong direction for strangulation, but it's the right direction for Kimuras. It's an easier triangle to lock when your opponent has broad shoulders or you have short legs. Mechanically, it's just easier to lock. And as a result, we can now start fishing for our training partner's elbow, and we pull it forward and expose that elbow. You can even lock hand over hand. So when he tries to straighten out his arm, we do a good job of getting that elbow up on our chest, and we get that wrist exposed. From here, we lock the figure of four. Sorry about that. And from here, we take his elbow to our opposite armpit. Okay? Because I have a triangle locked around him, there's almost no space for his head to move. And so now you can get breaking pressure in just a few millimeters instead of a conventional Kimura situation where there's a huge amount of play through the head and shoulders. And as a result, you have to move everything a long way to get any kind of breaking pressure. The second you lock up your training partner's head and arm, all that play goes out of the picture. So when I take his right elbow to my right armpit, even just the tiniest movements from here get submissions, okay? So let's have a look at all that again. I take his elbow out of position. And then from this position, my foot comes down. I get a hold of my own shin. As we start that action of turning around the corner, look how I just pull my foot past his collarbone. I lock up the figure of 4. And even a short-legged fool like me can do that easily, given that I'm locking this Kimura what appears to be the wrong way. It's much easier to lock this way than the conventional strangle methods. If I want his hand, look how I have to bridge to expose his hand and bring it up. Now from here I pull on the elbow, and as a result, we get the lock we want. From here, we thread everything through. I take Placido's right elbow to my right armpit, and now there's just no play in his arm, and we quickly get a submission. Much quicker than you ever would using conventional methods, where there's so much play in the arm that the arm can move around a lot before it finally gets broken. So this too is an excellent way for us to use Kimura out of this knee slide method. Guys, you will soon find that out of that knee slide, your opponent has very little opportunity to escape and get away from the danger that's starting to unfold. It is, in my opinion, the most high percentage way to keep tight, close proximity to an opponent and enter into the triangle. From there, you've got your strangleholds, you've got arm bars, Judo-Gatame type, and you've got Kimuras. Between all of those, it's going to be very, very difficult for an opponent to hold you off. We've been through a lot so far in this video, and most of it was concerned with the idea of creating a very simple but very effective systematic approach from side control. Guys, I have a general philosophy that I teach to my students, and I'm sure if you've seen my students in operation, you probably noticed this general pattern, that when I encourage my students to come out into bottom position and pull guard, all the attacks initiate with breaking your opponent's balance and then initiate into leg locks. So the primary form of attack follows a very similar pattern. Pull guard, attack their balance first, leg lock second, and everything seems to come off that. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule. There's times when it makes sense to attack the upper body first. There's times you attack sweeps first, but in the majority of cases, as a general rule, what I like to see in my students is to attack the part of the body that the opponents simply can't hide, and to initiate by attacking balance. Why? Because your opponent's standing or he's on 2 knees. He's in an upright position, and as such, everything starts with attacking his balance. When he's trying to recover his balance and his body's extended, then the legs are always going to be there. Okay, so that's my bottom philosophy. Top philosophy is very different. Then I very much favor the idea of attacking not your opponent's balance. Why? Because he's already on the ground. You've pinned him. Balance isn't an issue anymore. He's on his back. In those situations, it makes no sense to attack his balance. You want to attack his posture. And in particular, the posture concerned with his elbows and his elbow-knee connection. If you can break your opponent's posture through the elbows and elbow-knee connection, you can create extension in your opponents. And under those circumstances, it makes more sense to threaten the upper body, to go for strangleholds, arm locks, and your opponent's back. So the general watchword is, in bottom position, we typically operate by favoring the idea of coming out, attacking your opponent's balance, and going into the lower body. But in top position, we come out, attack our opponent's posture, and attack the upper body. That's the general pattern in my students' behavior. Now, of course, there's going to come times where you go to attack the upper body and you can't do it. Why? Because you can't win the battle for the elbows. Remember, what it means to say you're beating your opponent's posture in pins is you're beating his elbows, getting them out into weak extended positions. If I can't win the battle for the elbows, then it's usually a good time to go downstairs and start attacking the legs. Let's have a look at how that's going to flesh out now. Okay, so now let's start to look at a situation where, for whatever reason, you can't win the battle for the elbow. And your attempts to follow our general philosophy of attack your opponent's posture first through the elbow and then go into upper body submissions is failing you. You just feel this guy's got very robust elbow position. He's starting to pummel more effectively from bottom position than you are, and it's just not working out for you. Under these circumstances, it's probably quite likely he's going to start going into his escapes, and you've got to start thinking now about attacking other parts of his body. And because the most common escape in jiu-jitsu is the elbow escape, most of the time that's going to involve going downstairs into his legs. So let's look at how this occurs with an outside sit into my opponent's legs. Okay, if I'm pinning Placido across side, we know that ultimately what he's looking to do is to win the battle for inside position. He always wants his elbows close to his ribs, inside my hips, inside my bicep, etc., etc. And at some point, he's going to want to connect his knee and elbow together and form a frame so that that frame is positioned inside my body. Then his head can move away from me. He can start putting me back in guard. That's the general pattern that we work against. Okay, when we're here across our training partner's side, it's often the case that you can feel you're losing the battle for inside position. It's usually a pretty obvious thing. Okay, if I can't get inside my opponent's elbows and you feel his knee starting to come in, there's no secret what's coming next. Okay, when we feel we're doing this, rather than persist in controlling the head, which is obviously a losing battle at this point. In fact, not only is it a losing battle, but if I hold on to the head once he gets inside position, I'm really going to lose the battle, okay? Because then he can start going for arm locks and triangles on me. So if I'm an idiot and I persist on the head and he starts coming in here, now I'm getting all kinds of trouble. So once I feel my opponent has penetrated with knee and elbow and formed that frame, I'm going to relinquish my control of the head. And I'm going to start putting my hands shallow here, okay? Why? Because if my elbow stays over the hip and he brings the legs in, that's when he can arm lock me.
Take it down.
Yes. He can arm lock me right here, okay? So when I feel this is starting to occur, I bring my hands back. I'm going to take my inside leg and put my leg up just like so. So it forms a shelf and starts raising my training partner's knee to face up towards the ceiling. My second hand can post anywhere on him, the floor, it doesn't really matter. And then from here, my second knee comes up and I form two wedges around my training partner's leg just like so. So I'm in a low squat. From this position, I'm going to hug his knee and hold it so it's caught inside that wedge of my knees. You have two good choices now. You can either commit to the ground with no heel control, or you can get the heel control early on your training partner. This in general is the preferred option, but it's not the only option, okay? Now, from this situation, I'm gonna hit this move where I come in and I catch my training partner's heel, and then I'm just gonna sit back to my hips, making sure that I control my training partner right here between my legs. Now, I have two choices in where I'm going to go. The first choice is to throw my foot across my training partner's body. Why did I make that choice? Let's rotate this way. Why did I make that choice? Because I already had the heel. Okay, my opponent can't hide his heel from me because I've already got it. So when I pass my foot into this very safe inside position, when Placido goes to hide his heel from me, well, it's tough. I've already got it. From here, I focus on keeping my wrist pointing out at 90 degrees. If my fist points towards him, he can point his toes and slip his heel. So I want to make sure everything points out this way. Now from here, my hands come in and they make a good lock, wrist to wrist, on my training partner like so. Once we get here, I have my left foot on the inside. It's going to be hard for him to come towards me, but still he might try. From here, I can just place my second foot over his hip and go down to a very strong finish. So once again,
Go like this.
here. We're here across our training partner's side. Placido is doing a really good job of getting inside position, and I'm doing a relatively poor job of preventing him from doing so. So from here, I don't want to be the fool that hangs onto a pin too long and gets arm locked. So I take my elbow over his hip. At least now I don't have to worry about submission holds, at least on this arm. From here, my second hand comes out and posts either his body or the floor, and my knee comes up and locks. Now this is good, but ultimately I want his knee facing up to the ceiling, or even better, away from me like so. So I'm going to come up and wedge my second knee in. First option from here is for me to come locking my training partner's knee in place, and then catch, put this leg down, and catch his heel, just in like so. Okay? As I make the catch, look how I just sit down to a hip. As I sit down to a hip, I just take my foot across in this position. Why did I take this option? Because I already have the heel. If I didn't have the heel, and I put my foot in here, he would immediately go into a turn. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still good things you can do, okay? But you don't want to give the guy an extra opportunity to get out. But here at the heel, it's going to be risky for him to turn in that direction, okay? Now, when I pass my foot through, my legs are in a relatively safe position. Very hard for my opponent to counter leg lock me now. When he starts to turn in this direction, he's turning against his own heel. Can potentially hurt himself. Presumably his leg will be up defensively at this point. From this situation, if I just bring my bottom leg through and I place it right there. So as he comes forward to fight my hands, it's a difficult thing for him to accomplish. And then from here, we roll down into a tight finish. Okay? Just going to show you guys a little trick that I'm going to do with my foot from the other side. So, here we are. I see my opponent starting to go into escape. I go shallow with my hands. I pop up and I place my body in like so. Okay? Watch my right foot. When I go to sit and I pin my training partner's knee and I go around to his heel, my right foot is going to catch to my training partner's buttocks. Why? Because it prevents me from falling back down all the way like so. I push this foot into the buttocks and I land on my elbow. I do not crash back on my back and potentially hurt my training partner. Okay? Not only do you potentially hurt your training partner, but if your opponent has skills, they can end up on top of you. So I want to fall into a situation where my back is off the ground. Don't fall clumsily and heavily back on two shoulders. First, you're probably going to hurt your buddy. And second, in a fight situation, you're probably going to end up in bottom position. It's not the end of the world. You can still win from bottom position, but it's not what you were looking for. So, here we are again. I see my training partner coming in. I shorten my grip. I place my hand up. When I start that action of squatting over my training partner's legs, I hug in tight, and he wants to lock his legs defensively. So I go in there and I get my initial grip, and I fall to my elbow. Don't fall straight back. He steps over before you can get the Ashigarami in place. There's still things you can do, but it's not ideal. Okay? So I fall more or less onto my side. That side fall makes it very easy to pass my foot through. If he goes to turn out this way, he's turning into his, it's a risky direction to take. Okay? So what most of your opponents do from here is they come forward to fight the hands, etc., etc. We just place our foot over our training partner's hip, tighten up our lock, and it's done. One more time, Placido.
Yes, sir.
Same angle. This is the best angle to show the grip for this one. So, here we are. We're pinning our training partner, and we're losing that initial grip. Okay? I pop up. I place my knees in place. I hug my training partner, and when I go to fall down to the side, I fall like so. So I'm propped up. This makes it easy to pass my foot through. Now, as he goes to defend himself, I go to take my foot onto his hip. We're in the perfect position to attack. If Placido tried to step over, he'd be caught. He would break himself. Okay, so the smart thing to do is to sit back down. Remember, if Placido goes across, just put your leg over, and it's done. So the smart thing is to come down and try and come forward and fight my hands. But my right foot on the belly button makes it very, very difficult. His other option is to flee in this direction. I'm not going to say it can't work, but it's a scary option. There's now any pressure on my part, and it's done. Okay? So this is a really effective way to get into your opponent's legs. Now, some of you might be saying, okay, that looks cool, but to be honest, the guys I train with, they're my best friends, and I'm kind of reluctant just to fall back like that. I see some potential for injury there. That's not something I want to do with my buddies. Fair enough, I hear you. So I'm going to give you a safer option now. Okay, same thing, Placido. We're here across side. Placido's done that good job with his knee. So from here, we're going to shorten my arms. I bring that blocking, wedging leg up. Now the second leg comes up like so. This time, instead of me locking in over the top and going straight for that initial heel hook, I'm going to take my second hand and I'm going to post on my training partner's knee, just like so. So instead of me focusing here for the heel, I'm going to focus here. Now I'm going to drive my second knee to the mat. I'm just going to pass my foot through and lock. Now everything's about the secondary leg. Okay? Placido knows his best chance of escape is in this direction. Why? Because it hides his heel from me. If Placido turns towards me, then Placido's an idiot. He gives me the heel. Okay?
Some days I'm an idiot. Depends on the day, honestly.
Right. I'm a lot more idiotic than him, don't worry. So from here, he's smart if he turns in this direction. So I'm just going to cover my training partner's legs and lock up with one of our favorite gambits here, just like so. Double trouble. Both of my opponent's legs controlled. So we'll do it from another angle now, Placido. From a situation where my training partner starts to bring the knee in, I block, I bring my knee up. My second knee wedges my training partner in like so. From here, we start the action of pushing down on my training partner's second knee. From here, I take my foot up and through, and I get that inside position. Now, a lot of times, you'll be able to get two hands on the leg and just sit back. Okay, that's fine. Sometimes your opponent will be quite advanced in that roll, in which case, we just roll on through. Now, from here, we end up in a good attacking grip. Both of our training partner's legs well controlled. Okay, as he goes to fight and twist his way out of here, it's a very, very difficult thing. You have a classic expression here of double trouble. From here, we lock up on our training partner. 2 feet come in. I separate my training partner's legs, and we're in perfect position now to start gathering up our training partner's legs like so. Okay, and as a result, we can go through and get to our finishes. Now, another way we can operate here involves getting an initial Achilles lock on your training partner. This is designed just to form a strong connection to your opponent. It's not designed as a submission itself. We'll switch to a heel hook afterwards. So once again, we have an opponent here in front of us. Same general scenario. Placido goes to work his escapes, and from here, as I see him coming in, look how my knee wedges up, and we end up in good attacking position. Now, this time, instead of going after our training partner's heel, we're just going to lock the beginnings of an Achilles lock on a training partner, just like so. So that as we make our commitment down to the floor, look how my knee comes down, foot goes over. Because I have an Achilles lock, there's nothing to stop Placido from rotating out. As we see the rotation, we hold on to the knee. We have that, what appears to be an Achilles lock in place. I'm going to focus on taking my opposite foot across to the opposite leg. It's usually pretty easy to do. As Placido goes into his roll, we're going to focus on a turn that takes us around his legs. Now you have a heel hook. I take this foot and pass it through and around. Placido, can you rotate your head to your left?
To my left. Let me
Further?
know. Keep going.
Further. Okay, what's so special about this? I have a foot in front of Placido's leg, that's my right foot, and I have a leg behind his leg, that's my left. From this situation, his far leg is controlled from both front and back by my 2 legs. It's not the strongest control in the world, but it's strong enough. When he tries to pull his legs free, it's going to be very, very dangerous for him to do so. His best option now is to try and remove my left foot. If he can do so and free the foot, now he can start backstepping. Go back. If he doesn't remove the foot and he tries to backstep, he gets broken. So for him to backstep, he's got to remove that foot. That takes time. And in that time, he could be broken. Okay? But let's say he's willing to take some damage. When we see this kind of thing going on, I see him go to backstep, my knee follows him. I never have situations where my chest is open, facing the ceiling, and he backsteps. Why? Because that exposes my elbow to Placido. And then from there, he can defeat me. The only exception to this is where my chest faces down. Now, if Placido goes to backstep, he'll shred his own leg. That's just not a smart thing to do, okay? But if I've screwed up and my chest is not facing down and I'm facing upwards, watch my knee. When he goes over, my knee tracks him like so. So now I hide my elbow from Placido. Coming back, Placido?
Yes, sir.
If I stay chest up to the ceiling and he goes and I don't, I've exposed my elbow to him and he defeats my lock. So when he goes to back step, I've got to hide my right elbow. So from here, I track over. Now from this position, look how I take my feet and lock them. He wants to join his feet together. So I want to make sure that we rotate everything over, my knees towards the floor, and we get very strong finishes. So one more time. As he starts bringing his knee in, we come up and we form that initial wedge over our training partner's legs. This time, I'm going to go in with what appears to be an Achilles lock. When I come down towards the floor, I pass my foot through and I see my training partner go into a turn. I block his far leg as best I can. From here, as we go to rotate, I just pass my foot through and we're in good attacking position. Most of the time from here, the double 50 position, essentially it's a form of double trouble control in the far leg. It's 50-50 grip, but with control of the second leg, so it has the features of both double trouble and 50-50. We get our break. Plus, if you could just shift so we don't run into the wall.
Yeah.
Bring your head towards the camera.
Head towards the camera, yeah.
Okay, now, if Placido just tries to backstep from here, he goes into the double 50 and he gets broken. If he's smart and he removes his foot and he has sufficient time to do so, now if he backsteps and I'm naive and present my chest to the ceiling, he can get my elbow and beat my lock. What I should do is have my chest facing down to the floor. So when he goes to backstep, he'll break his own leg. But if I make a screw up and my chest is facing up and he turns, I must turn with him and set him down. From this position, I lock the figure of 4. I come up and I hide my elbow from him. Turn down, and it's done. Okay? So there you have it, attacking from the outside. When you first start learning this skill, guys, get used to the idea of just putting that wedge up and making it fast and efficient. So when we start off with a training partner in here, and I see him coming in, that's how we want to be operating, just going right down into our training partner's legs and getting that good body position. So as I see my training partner, okay, now from here, we find ourselves in a perfect position to go in on the attack and consistently getting into our training partner's heels. So as I feel my opponent pushing, look how my knees come up, and now we're in perfect position to go in on the attack. You can practice stepping inside your training partner's legs, then going through and getting to your favorite attacking positions. If you like, going directly into outside control, you can do this too. Okay, instead of throwing my foot from the inside, it's also permissible to come down, just follow your legs over to the outside, whichever one you prefer. All of them will be very effective when your opponent tries to escape and you lose the upper body battle. We're looking at the idea of entering into leg locks when we feel we're losing the battle for upper body control. Essentially, what we're trying to advance in this video is this idea that in order to bridge the gap between pinning and submission, you need an intermediary step. And this step is to break your opponent's defensive posture. In the case of side control and mount, defensive posture is mostly concerned with your opponent's elbow position and their elbow-knee connection. If you can break that, you can break your opponent. Now, we've been looking at this idea that there's gonna be days you go up against talented opponents, you can't win the battle at the elbows. You can't. And you've got to have something else to work with in these circumstances. And the philosophy that I'm trying to push on you is, if you can't win the battle for the elbow, win the battle for the legs. Go downstairs, attack their legs. Okay, you got nothing to lose. If you've lost the battle for the elbow, he's going to get out. So you might as well win the battle downstairs. Initiate with upper body attacks and pins. That's my philosophy. Break their defensive posture and then focus on upper body attacks. They're the most high percentage when you're pinning people. But if you lose that battle, don't just quit. Don't just give up. Go downstairs and attack them downstairs instead. Now, the first method that we looked at is probably the most commonly seen. It's certainly the one that my students use the most, and that's to use the outside entries into inside heel hooks. Now we're going to look at the idea of step-through entries. These ones are more proactive. Instead of waiting for my opponent to put his leg in place for me, I'm going to go right into his legs. So I'm going to initiate, okay? So if we have Placido down, okay, we're pinning him across side. Fellas, in general, I'm going to recommend to you, if you're going to use this method, don't do it from cross faces. Do it from reverse cross faces. It's much better, okay? You can do it on the other side. It's not wrong, but it's more problematic, okay? The reason why is because when you take a reverse cross face, you blind your opponent, okay? Here, Placido can see everything that I'm doing. There's nothing between his eyes and me. But when I bring a reverse cross face into place, he's blinded, okay? So he doesn't know what the hell's going on downstairs. In these situations, if I feel Placido is doing a really good job with inside elbow position, let's say, for example, he got into an underhook, or he got his elbow right inside, or he's playing with really good forearm cross face here, okay? And I'm just unable to get any kind of inside control, and I feel he's doing a really good job of putting me back. Maybe he's put me back in guard successfully a bunch of times, and I'm thinking I got to go to plan B at this point. Okay, under these circumstances, what we're going to do is we're going to put a hand down on the floor, and I'm going to post on my training partner's hips, or even on the mat on the near side. I leave that up to you. And from here, I'm going to start an action of sitting through towards my training partner's legs, like so. Now from here, we're going to pop up. I'm going to place my hip right there on his chest. It's a rather tenuous looking position, but believe it or not, guys, it's actually surprisingly robust. Why? Because your base is so freaking wide. Hand, foot, second foot. If your opponent goes to move around from here, you're actually pretty well based. Okay? So we started off like so. We went into the position up here, and then in one motion, I just sit through. From the sit through position, I'm just going to take my foot and just put it inside my opponent's legs. My second leg is going to come in here and pinch so that I have a good connection to my opponent's near hip. Now, because of the nature of the move, I'm going to recommend you guys grab this ankle. I'm going to touch my knee and ankle together. I'm going to lift, and all we're going to do is just catch 2-on-1. And we're going to sit down to the floor and point our knee at our training partner's sternum, just like so. So let's have a look at all that again. From a situation where I'm across my training partner's side, I switch across into a situation now where we can't really see what the hell's going on. So under those circumstances, we can start taking our hands, just in like so. I give a little pop up and I just sit onto my training partner's chest. So I have no elbow control whatsoever. But I'm facing my opponent's legs. As a result, I can just step my foot so my shoelaces touch his hamstring. As I reach for the far ankle, I bring my knee and my foot very close together. So if he were to try to move his left leg out of here, it's kind of locked in by my legs. Then I just grab the secondary leg and I just sit down. And as a result, we're able to gather it up and bind it. And now we have one of our favorite attacking positions. From Placido's perspective, that's the direction of his escape. But he can't do it until I let go of this leg. Okay, so one more time, just looking at the general entry. We're in a basic side control. We go through, we take our reverse cross face. From this position, I move up and I sit into a position where now I just cast my leg or my foot inside. Notice my knee never enters his legs, only the foot. Now from here, my God, Placido, am I getting that fat? From here, when they say no, that means a big yes. When they say nothing, it means a big yes. From here, my foot and my knee pass very close to each other. Now I grab 2-on-1 and I sit down to the mat. As a result, we're able to gather up our training partner's foot and find ourselves in a fine attacking position. Okay, so how are we going to attack off this? We'll switch positions now. Feet this way, feet this way. So here we are. Arm comes across. Second hand comes in. We find ourselves in a good position now to pop up and bring our hip onto our training partner. From this balanced position, I cast my foot to the inside. My knee comes scooting around the corner, and we're in the perfect position now as ankle and knee come together to sit back into our training partner's legs. From this position, he's going to want to rotate this way. It's not an easy thing because you're controlling the secondary leg. I want him rotating in this direction. As he puts all his resistance here, it's not going to be easy. Okay? So from here, many ways for us to go in and control our training partner and lock up. As I see my training partner go to turn and move, as long as you have this control, it's not going to be easy. But at some point, he's going to be able to turn. So I'm going to go hunting for my training partner's foot and control his foot to my chest, just holding it in like so. So when Placido goes to rotate out, it's a difficult thing for him to accomplish. Okay? As I see him go for his rotation and turn, we're going to get opportunities now. Rotate this way a little bit. As he turns this way, there's less and less danger of him countering my legs. Face me. If I take my foot and put it over here while he's facing me, he can break my leg. But if he's turning to get away from me, he's facing the wrong direction to counter me. So from here, I'm just going to cast my feet over to the outside. Now when he goes to turn, my feet are pointing in the opposite direction of his turn. He's trying to turn to my right, but my feet are pointing to my left. When he goes to make that turn, it's going to slow him down. It's going to be a very slow turn. And a slow turn is easy to follow. So as Placido goes to make his turn, I'm going to build up to an elbow and get my body in front of his foot. So even as Placido goes into his turn, we're going to get opportunities to go through and get to our lock and to our finish. So once again, on a situation where we're across our training partner's side, we've managed to get into a good position relative to our training partner, and we start that action of popping up onto the chest. From here, my foot goes inside my training partner's leg. My knee comes around the corner, so my foot and my knee are very close together. I don't want him initially just scampering out of here. And this position should stop him. Why? Because he control both of his legs. Okay, he can, if Placido just goes to explode out of this position, it's going to be tough. It's hard to get away from. Okay, now we gather up our training partner's two legs. Once we've got control of the legs, we see he wants to rotate this way. If Placido's an idiot and starts rotating this way, well, he's going to expose his own foot. That's not a smart thing for him to do. Smart thing for him to do is to play a waiting game while I have this leg. And then when I go to release it, the smart thing to do is to turn away from me. Because now he hides the heel from me. Okay? So, as we see our opponent moving around from here, look how we're going to reach and get a hold of our training partner's foot and glue the blade of his foot to our chest. When he goes to turn, nope, very tough. If I see him facing me, then I'm going to sit forward and break him. So he knows that. So of course he's going to want to turn. But when he turns, there's nothing stopping me from passing my legs to the outside. If he was facing me and I went to throw a leg to the outside, there's a danger of counterattacks. But when he's facing away from me, there's no such danger. Okay? You can slow him down. He goes to turn, you can just hold right in here, keeping the blade of the foot on the chest. But at some point, I'm going to start building for height and getting my torso in front of his foot. As long as his foot's in front of my torso, I never win the battle. So my whole thing is to get my head and torso in front. So now as he goes to rotate through, we get to that exposed heel. And it's from situations like this that we can lock up and finish. If Placido goes to flee the man, it's an awfully difficult thing to do. If he tries to backstep, I will face my chest down to the floor. If my chest faces the floor and Placido backsteps, he'll break his own knee. If Placido, for whatever reason, probably because my chest is facing up to the ceiling, is able to turn, we make sure we turn with him, like so that my elbow is always hidden from Placido. From here, I push with one foot, so I can lock up the figure of four, forehead touches the mat, and we get the finish. Okay? Done in this way, you can use this simple step through between your opponent's legs to bind up his legs and get into really effective lower body submissions when your upper body submissions aren't firing.